women who eventually hold the title Honorable. Now, he was a larger-than-life figure in the literal sense, but quite a statesman. Joseph Nkaissery is a name that sparks a memory of discipline, order, respect in the minds of many Kenyans. His sudden death in 2017 shocked a nation and provoked questions on just what happened and, more importantly, who Joseph Nkaissery, the man, was. Tonight, we have the rare but privileged opportunity to speak to his widow, Hellen Pilale Nkaisserry. She recently launched a memoir she penned in his honor titled The General and I. Thank you so much, Mrs. Nkaissery, for joining us this evening. It's such a beautiful book and memory, almost 600 pages that you put together here. For those who are watching, the general public who remember him as this very tough, stoic, strict man, what do you remember about him? What can you tell us about him, especially as a family man?
I think he was, he was a father, a wonderful husband, a leader right from his early years, and somebody who really, truly loved his family and loved his country so much. So to me, what I remember is missing him in all those fears.
Right.
Because the amount of efforts that he would put to make sure that his family felt loved, and the way he set a tempo for leadership and even mentoring his own children to know what leadership means, and the levels of sacrifice that he made for this country. That is what I remember.
And many of those sacrifices, you know, did affect the family. When you're talking about being a military wife, a military family, many times he was deployed outside different parts of the country. And you wrote something very interesting in the book, in your chapter called Hellos and Goodbyes. And you said, my husband's returns were a mixture of honeymoon and awkward realigning of roles as I tried to cede some of the decisions about money and investment to him in that traditional way that women are raised to allow men to take the lead on finances. But he was comfortable leaving me, the mathematician, to calculate the risks and decide on our next project. I was juggling so many roles and responsibilities. What was that like for you to be that supportive wife to a man who, you know, had so much responsibility and duty?
From the day I got married to him, he was always a busy man and out there serving. We met when he was a young captain in the army and got married when he just got promoted to be a major.
Yeah.
And in the early years in the military, when you are still in the junior ranks, you are bound to travel and go out on exercises and training. And the field he was in, he was always an expert in training. So he was out there in the bushes, in taking cadet students to train them all over. So I never had the luxury of really having him every day, 24 hours every day. He would go out and maybe come after 2 months. And that's how we led our life, that I know that when he comes, then that week or those few days, he's home and he has to understand and feel how I've been managing. And then I'm prepared because he has to leave to go back again to serve. Yeah.
This is now, what, 5 years since he passed on?
5.5.
5.5 years. What inspired you to write the book?
Many things. One, I felt like many people really didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
And I felt I needed to tell the world who he really was. I also felt that he sacrificed so much, and he worked tirelessly and was managing work with a lot of dedication, but always making sure that he sets the right standards, and never leading in a wrong, giving a wrong example, but leading to show people the right way to lead. And for the sake of his children, and my grandchildren and great-grandchildren to come, I felt they needed to have somewhere to refer to know who he was. The other reason is that in honoring him, this is part of his legacy to him in his honor. And just before he died, he had started the General Nkaissery Family Foundation Trust, which was helps the needy people within the community. And therefore, I thought that having this book, the proceeds would go to continue that legacy of continuing to support the needy around us. Yeah.
Certainly, you know, at a point in your lives, you left Kenya and went to the U.S. for a year, and you described that transition for you. Coming from a career teacher, you had a very successful experience in education, to now becoming a housewife and making that adjustment in a foreign country. What was that like for you?
It was difficult, but I felt that that was also a way for me to sacrifice what I love to do most, for the sake of my children and him, and also the country, so that he would be able to carry on his studies without any interruptions. So I had to quickly change roles and know that from morning, everyone else will have to go to school, because he was also going to school, and drop the children in their respective schools. And in a country where there is no support of people around in the home, make sure that the home remains the way it has always been here in Kenya. Yeah.
When we move on to his time as a politician, he entered politics back in 2003. And in the chapter that you call His No Was a No, you say, the person my husband was in private is the person he was in politics. So, you know, tell us more about what that actually looked like.
He was somebody who wants to achieve to the highest level in every aspect of life. If it is in his dressing, he has to dress to the highest level. And he wanted everybody in the family like that. If it is education of his children, it has to be excellent. If it is in managing and making sure that you know, his family eats well, he did all that. So he had no way of, you know, sort of changing standards out there. And when he comes home, he changes to a lower level. He was always the same all through. Yeah.
I'm curious, the title, The General and I, why that particular one?
Initially, when I started writing this book, I wanted to write about him. But the writer who I engaged to help me write the book listened to me for about 3 months. And they realized that we can't write this book without talking about, we can't write without talking about me. And therefore, they convinced me, and it worked out well, that this book would have more substance, because I can't separate myself from him. Every aspect of life, every story that I try to bring out always had me win in it. So I realized that we always have, it has to be the general and I. Yeah.
Let's talk about the moment that literally took the country by shock. And that was the day that we found out about his demise. You call that chapter The Aftermath. Where were you, and what was going through your mind when the news first came to you?
I was at home, and we were just the two of us. And I had just traveled back from our country home. And it was an evening just like normal, like any other. Always jovial in his very high spirits.
Yeah.
And to my shock, he just woke up in the night, and I saw him collapsing and rushing him to hospital, we were told. And from there, I don't know what happened, because I think I also blacked out. Yeah. After the next day, I found myself in hospital. Yeah. So it was really shocking. Yeah.
As you were moving through that season of grief, what did you hold on to get you through? I'm sure you had friends and family who came around, but what kept you going through that time?
At first, of course, it was a moment of shock and disbelief and confusion. But that moved on after some weeks, and I had to come to the realization that it has really happened. And I was bitter, confused, fearful, and it put me down. So, which lasted almost 2 years in that state of not really being quite stable to make any decisions. And the same with the children. We all went through a very tough, traumatic period. But what held us is our faith, because he was somebody who really valued and made sure that we stood by the faith that we believe in, which is a faith in Jesus Christ. And that helped us to come together. And therefore, in our crying, we knew where we could run to. In our fears, we knew where to run to. And in that state of bitterness, we would always know that through prayer, then the bitterness can go down, because it was really tough, yeah.
And I have to ask, what role did writing this book play in the healing for you?
Oh my, I think this is what I needed. I started writing this book, of course, 4 years after his death. And I think it gave me a chance to bring out all the feelings, and I put them in the book. This book is written many times when I'm crying. In fact, the writers sometimes cry with me. I've written many times when I'm laughing, because I remember his jovial spirit, and I try to capture the memories of the times when he would just make us happy, crack jokes about everything. And therefore, those are the kind of feelings that I went through as I wrote this book.
Just as we wrap up, I want to read some beautiful words about him that you put in the chapter, Growing Through the Ranks. And you said, "My husband had many sides to him, and a prankster was just one of them. He was an amazing cheerleader, supportive of my ideas, my destiny maker, always pushing me to grow in new directions." What did you mean by destiny maker?
If you try to look back at his leadership in the military, in politics and even in cabinet.
Yeah.
I was always by his side, and he never wanted me to be behind. It was working together. He encouraged me to take up roles, and most of the achievements that I have made in leadership as he led were because of him making sure that I worked along with him. And he would, you know, in public meetings, he would, before he even talks about everything, he says, and I want to congratulate my wife because she's been able to do ABCD. She started the women cooperative. The women are now supplying milk to new KCC. She has taken up a role of taking care of our livestock. I don't even know how many cows we have now because she's the one who is managing everything. And coming from our culture, where we come from, where a man always has to be seen to be the one at the front, he always made sure that I'm the one to be seen more. And as much as sometimes it would make me feel a bit uncomfortable, but that was him. And he didn't care where it was. If it is in State House, he says, I've reached this level because of this lady.
Wow.
And it makes me come and stand there in front of the president. He's even announcing to him that I have reached here because of this lady.
Amazing.
So that was him. He always saw me as a partner in everything and wanted me to be appreciated because there is nothing I ever did alone and that he doesn't know or he does not contribute to. And even for him, in whatever he does, he made sure that I was involved in his life in everything.
Well, I tell you from what you've told me this evening, a lot of people will want this book. My last question to you is, what is your favorite chapter, if you even have one?
I think all chapters. I think all chapters are wonderful.
Yeah.
And I would wish that if people buy and read, because it is our life history. And I try to capture what the memories that bring joy to me, and I hope bring joy to everybody else. But I also try to capture something that will guide leaders in this country. One of the chapters which I decided to take it up is to talk to our country, that sometimes our people in our country can be too hard to our leaders, such that when they are working so hard, instead of them appreciating their efforts, they are being hurled stones at, you know, and that brings a lot of puts a lot of pressure on them and stress. And so I spoke for the sake of others who may never. And I also spoke about my experience at the time when he was in the top leadership, what I was going through, the hardships that I went through. So there's a lot of good memories, but there are also parts of trying to express what I went through in every stage of life. Yeah.
And thank you so much for taking the time out to come and speak with us, Mrs. Nkaissery. Where can we get the book?
You can get the book in the bookshop at the Yaya Center, at Nuria Bookstore, very soon at the Textbook Center. And you can also get it through a number that we give, which is for the foundation, so people can get it here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And all the best. And of course, you've just heard it from Mrs. Nkaissery herself, where you can get the book. It's a beautiful read and a wonderful honor.